morning. I said good morning to everybody. Hello. Yeah, there we go. It's great to see you. All right, so we're in 2 Kings chapter 6. If you'll make your way there as you're going to 2 Kings 6, if you're not in that spot already. I know you care so deeply, so I want to mention to you about my early years. It's just a few years ago that I was in junior high. And we had this perfect driving range in our cattle field. From corner to corner, it was a little over 250 yards, which back then we didn't really hit quite that far. So it worked out really well with all of our different clubs. And I had a little problem, though, when I played golf. I didn't always control my anger the way that I should. And I may or may not have broken 2 clubs over my little pool caddy that I had from bad shots that I hit on the golf course through the years. But I was out in the field and I was all by myself, and I didn't have Dad to, kind of keep me in check with that. So I'd hit a few bad shots with my pitching wedge, and of course I was frustrated with that. And I thought, the next bad shot I hit, I'm just going to I'm in a field, open field. What's it going to hurt? I'm just going to rear back and chuck that club as far as I can. I had made up in my mind. Well, the next shot I hit a bad one, so I reared back and just let it go. What could go wrong? Wide open field, no problems out there. Well, I held on to my release just a little bit too long. And whenever I let go, I pulled it, kind of like some of my golf shots. I pulled it right over that direction, and I helplessly watched it end over end going through the air. And it hit me. I thought, oh no, you've got to be kidding me. Over where our muddy, poopy cattle pond, right in that direction, I thought, okay. I just took off as fast as I can. Maybe I'm going to get lucky, surely it ought to be just around it. I looked everywhere all around that pond, nowhere to be found. I thought, oh man, it stinks. And I realized that being a complete idiot, I lost my pitching wedge forever. Well, as fate would have it, we had about a 5-year drought. It was around the year 2000. Probably many of you remember. It was super hot and dry through the summers. And we had a very, very toasty period. And I was out for some reason around that pond, and of course the waters had really receded, and you had even the breakage and the mud lines, and the pond bottom. And I said, what's that? That's my pitching wedge. And sure enough, I went out and I got my pitching wedge, and I had it back. It was a miracle. Sometimes miracles with metal do happen in water. We're going to have an instance of that today in 2 Kings 6 and the first 7 verses. Only this one is a bona fide miracle. So verse 1 of 2 Kings chapter 6. And the sons of the prophets said to Elisha. Let's hang on just a second here. The sons of the prophets. These are all in this gathering, this commune, and they're all attending an educational facility together. What do we call this in the Old Testament? What's the reference? They're all a part of what are termed the schools of the prophets. They're being taught in prophecy. I know it's not always a complete carbon copy in the Bible, but it's the concept of preaching prophecy. Now, a lot of theirs is they're by miraculous means telling the future and things like that. But a lot of times they're just stating things that are true about the present or about history and learning lessons from that too. These are the schools of the prophets, and for those who have been in our studies, I don't know if you recall this, but hopefully you'll be able to see from the map that you have Bethel, this is in the southern reaches, Bethel, Jericho, and Gilgal. Jericho and Gilgal are really close to the Jordan River. And as you can tell by the arrows that are going to it, and we've encountered these are the schools of the prophet as Elijah's on his farewell tour, saying goodbye to everybody. And he, with Elisha, they drop into these places and probably encourages these prophets in training as he's been for so many decades before he departs to the Holy Land, the true Holy Land. So they're Bethel, Jericho, and Gilgal. We're not told which one of these it is. Some believe it's Jericho. It could be Gilgal. I guess it's possible that it could be Bethel. But these sons of the prophets, in whichever of these 3 locations they are, said to Elisha, "See now the place where we dwell with you." He's staying with them for a time, probably helping out as an instructor, I wouldn't doubt. See, now the place where we dwell with you is too small for us. Please, let us go to the Jordan, and let every man take a beam from there, and let us make there a place where we may dwell. This is a good problem to have. Preaching schools are overflowing. And I'm going to guess this probably has to do with the influence of two great guys, Elijah and Elisha, recently. So, things are going very well, and people are interested in God again and studying to be great prophets of His. They've run out of space. So they said, let's go to this area where we know there's an abundant wood, and each of us will take a beam that we can carry from there, and in this area, we will build bigger facilities for our school. Then one said, please consent to go with your servants. We want you to accompany. He probably has a little bit of age to him by this point. Maybe they're just wanting to chit-chat and try to glean some wisdom along the way, or maybe they suppose we could encounter a dilemma. This guy, he does all kinds of cool stuff. We've seen this before. Bless you. And he answered, I will go. So he went with them. And when they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water. Remember the body of water? This isn't the nasty pond scum as far as a pond. But what have we learned from the last chapter about the Jordan River? And if it helps any, it's Naaman, and he wants to be cleansed, and he's told to go dip in the Jordan River 7 times. And what's his response to that? Why that one? If I'm dirty and I need to be made clean, why wouldn't I do the Pharpar? And all the other rivers of Damascus, they're more like ours in the Ozarks. These beautiful, clean, clear, spring-fed streams. Why the Jordan River? So it's not a stagnant body of water as far as a lake or a pond, but it kind of looks like it. All right? It's a little more like the Ohio, the Missouri, or the Mississippi River as far as its color goes, not in size, but just as far as its color. So you have an iron axe head that falls off. How does this happen? We're not told. Most of us in here, we've split some wood in our lives, right? But this is a rule of wood splitting. You never stand directly across from somebody. And why is that the case? There you go. Every now and then, a head will detach from the force and the contrast that's at work there, and it'll go flying. It could really hurt. In fact, it could kill somebody if it hits them in the wrong place. So you never stand directly across from someone. The head might just come flying off. So while you're splitting wood, how might also the head become detached? Okay, get stuck in the wood. Could be just from the handle breaking because you're a poor aim. I've been there. I've done that. You can crack the handle, it can weaken, or you might just clean miss, and instead of striking with the head, you strike with the shaft, and it snaps right off. When we were cutting probably about 4 or 5 loads of wood for my grandmother over one holiday, all of us kids and several adults were helping out. I'm thankful that many were with us because my dad, I think I get my temper from him, and he could get very angry. Well, he didn't like whenever maul handles got busted. Every now and then that would happen. He would be angry, though, if it ever did. That day we had a bunch of novices, yours truly included, trying to help split wood. No joke. We broke 3 maul shafts in a single day, one day. And I knew Dad was fuming on the inside. I was so thankful all those people were around, though. I think it spared my life. Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing, it happens when you're splitting. We're not told here exactly how it came off, but we do know that the iron axe head. What do you know about iron? Really, any metal, but especially iron. What do you know about it? It's dense, meaning there's tremendous weight. What do we know about water? This is basic physics at work. Water, relatively, is light. Okay? H, that's 1. O, that's number 8 on the periodic table, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a few years. So that's very light. You look up, and iron's going to be, way heavier, Fe, right, than what these are. So that's just physics at work. It's going to sink. Physically, it's impossible for the metal to float up. There's a reason that I lost my pitching wedge in the pond Water is very light, and the metals and the other substances on that are very heavy comparatively. So it sank. The same thing happens right here. Maybe he misses in trying to strike a tree or even whittle down the wood later, and it flies off, or maybe it just comes off. That kind of thing happens. Listen to this, though. But as one was cutting down the tree, 2 Kings 6:5, the iron axe head, heavy, fell into the water, basic physics at work. And he cried out and said, I love how short he is. Like, he's probably from the Ozarks. It doesn't even sound like fluent speech. He talks the way we do. Alas, master, for it was borrowed. It's not great language, right? But you get the point in what he's saying, and maybe he's so distraught he can't even put together his thoughts very well. I'm going to read from the contemporary English version, which really captures the sentiment. Oh, he shouted, sir, I borrowed this axe. Isn't that the way it always works? I hate borrowing things from people. I appreciate our Christian family so much. We have such a great group, and I know I've had so many things offered to me. I've utilized a lot of the things that you've offered, and hopefully you've had things offered for me and have utilized those, and I really don't care. I want you to use it. I feel like anything I have is God's things anyway, and I want His family to have ready access to those. I say it constantly at our church family, and I genuinely mean it. Our house is your house. And that's not just when you're invited over. There is an open, standing invitation always. Our house is your house. Our vehicles are your vehicles. Our tools are your tools. That's just the way I look at it, and I think everybody in this room does the same thing. That being said, I hate borrowing things. Invariably, when you borrow somebody's tool, car, home, whatever it is, what happens? Something breaks. And then and you're borrowing it. A lot of times you're borrowing something for a reason. It's like, I can't afford it. Maybe not permanently, but right now I can't afford it. And that's why a lot of times I'm borrowing something from you. And then I break your thing, and of course the only right thing for me to do is to take care of whatever expenses are involved. This guy doesn't have an axe. I'm going to guess probably by his reaction he can't afford an axe, but he borrowed somebody's axe. He goes down, he's cutting down this tree or maybe whittling it even further, and the axe head, as he swings, kind of like my pitching wedge, and he's just watching helplessly as it's going through the air toward the body of water. And the issue is that it falls not just into a body of water, but into a moving, that makes it more challenging, and secondly, a very cloudy, muddy body of water. So it's not like it's just, you're in a clear stream where you spot something and reach down or get a tool or a limb or, whatever you have to do, a net, and you get it up. You're not even going to be able to find where it is that it went in. How frustrating is that? But immediately, he becomes quite excited that they asked this guy to come along with them. He's done a lot of crazy things. And notice that he immediately addresses Elisha. Okay? What am I supposed to do? Master, I borrowed it. So the man of God said, where did it fall? And he showed him the place, the general area. So he cut off a stick and threw it in there, and he made the iron float. Therefore he said, pick it up for yourself. So he reached out his hand and took it. This guy can't do anything with this situation. Physics are working against him. There's no way to physically explain this as far as the reversal. Now the effect itself there is. Iron is way heavier than water, and so iron is going to sink in the water. So he can do nothing about it. Yet, Paul, did you notice there at the end, the guy says, now you go do something about it. God always has us do, as Paul pointed out last week, what we can do, even though in the big thing we can't do it ourselves. And think about salvation, how that works. God did for us what we could never do. But he didn't say, okay, well now automatically through osmosis has been applied to you. He says, now you can do for yourself what is possible. put your trust in me. You can change the way that you've wired your mind to operate. You can change your lifestyle. You can go down in water and you can be dipped in it, like Naaman. There's something, but I found that interesting, Paul. He always has us do something, doesn't he? And that's the case. At least demonstrate enough faith that this isn't a mirage, that you're actually seeing the impossible. Something heavier floating and something lighter. The iron has come to the top. Okay, so outside of what I've just briefly mentioned right here, it's kind of a cool story, and we're going to move on from that. But I want to take just a few minutes here. What's further application you can see from this? What's something that inspires you from this story? I have a thing or two, but I'd like to hear from you. Yes, Paul? Super. I think that's a tremendous application, Paul. 1 Peter 5:7 doesn't tell us to cast some of the concerns that we have on our minds on him. It says cast all your cares, all your concerns. If it concerns you, it concerns God. Now, I'll go back to James 4. We want to make sure about motivation, right? That it's in the right place. I could say, well, it concerns me that I'm not a billionaire like Elon Musk. And okay, no, not that. That's poor motivation. But yeah, if there's something that's bothering you, and I'm the same way, Paul. I've thought about that. It's like it seems so small, but then you're reminded of that. But God cares, and He wants you to talk to Him about it. Excellent. What else, Joe? Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that. Very well said, Joe. Any others? I think just a small, simple application mind is this. This is impossible. What happened? There's no hope. And yet we serve a God who specializes in defying the odds. And He defies the impossible things. I think about when the angel comes to Mary and says, great news, you're going to have a child. And she's like, whoa. That's essentially, she tells him that's impossible because, and she gives the physical explanation. And he goes on to say, well, actually, it is possible because you're failing to realize that God is going to get involved in this. And when He does, that which is impossible will be made possible. And then she's told this, for with God, nothing will be impossible. You recall the discussion with the disciples and Jesus, and they're like, well, who in the world is going to be saved? It sounds like it can't happen. He's like, well, with men, you're right. This is impossible. It's never going to occur. But not with God, because with God, all things are possible. We serve the God who specializes in the impossible. And when we encounter these circumstances where we try to fix things on our own and we realize we can't, instead of just giving up and saying, well, it's never going to happen, recognize the God that we serve and rely on Him. Ask for His help to get involved and truly trust that He can. He always has, and that He can do the impossible things. That's a lesson that I draw from it. So we have Elisha and the axe head. Last week we had Elisha and the Syrian, Elisha and the apprentice, and this week we have Elisha and the axe, now Elisha and the Syrians. And we'll actually spend the remainder of this class period and then our one next week on his involvement with the Syrians. Verse 8, now the king of Syria was making war against Israel. I'm going to put back up our map, and I know the Syrian borders, just like the Israeli and Judean ones, are not depicted here, but that is up to the very northeastern portion of the screen. I love how on these screens, it's like the building and the TVs are literally set up to, it's actually the northeast side. That works. So top right, if that's easier for you. But top right is Syria, the capital city is found up there, Damascus. The king of Syria was making war against Israel, and that's the neighbor who is down to the southwest. And he consulted with his servants, saying, my camp will be in such and such a place. And the man of God, that's Elisha, the man of God sent to the king of Israel, saying, beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. Showing his genuine powers as a prophet, not just to speak truths about the present or about the past, but as well to be able to accurately predict the future. So, verse 10, the king of Israel sent someone to the place of which the man of God had told him, and sure enough, The Syrians were down there. Good thing they didn't pass down that way. Thus he warned him and was watchful there. Not just once or twice, meaning many times this occurs. But the king of Syria is intent on wreaking havoc in Israel. He doesn't give up. Verse 11, therefore the heart, though, of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing. And he called his servants and said to them, will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? What does he mean by that? There we go. Who's the rat? Oh, you want to kill the rat? I want to kill one of you. Who is the traitor, Emily, among us? Who's revealing the battle plans of the king? Verse 12, and one of his servants said, none, my lord, O king. The prophet, or the issue isn't one among us. The issue is the one among the Israelites. It's Elisha, the prophet, who is in Israel. And he's telling the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. It's not out among all, but as it's coming out, man, word travels fast when you're a prophet of God, instantaneously, maybe even sometimes before it's spoken. So my question to you, though, is this. How do these people in a pagan land, separated by roughly, don't forget the capital of Israel is Samaria, so up to the northeast, separated by 100 miles in ancient times, how do these people know about the religion and the prophet in Israel? Okay, very good. Yeah, don't forget, they've heard about the God of the Israelites because they've carried away already. We've encountered a young slave girl, right? And many others, undoubtedly, who've been taken away in raids. Very good, Emily. And also, speaking of a young slave girl, what recently just took place in chapter 5? Naaman's conversion. Not just that he's healed, but he is truly converted. From where does he come? Nation of Syria. What's his job there? Yeah, he is. And he's high up as one to the king. Go back to chapter 5, just very quickly here. Chapter 5, verse 1. Now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria. He's a great and honorable man in the eyes of his master. By him the Lord has given victory to Syria. Mighty man of valor, but he's a leper. Look down in verse 17, as Emily suggested. He's not just healed, but he as well is converted. So Naaman said, then if not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth, for your servant will no longer offer burnt offering or sacrifice to other gods, not those of Syria or any land, but only to the God of Israel, to the Lord, Yahweh himself. Now you go back to our text in chapter 6, verse 12. One of his servants says, here's the problem, Elisha the prophet. The king has been commanding these military exercises to be taking place. Who do you think's been in charge of these military exercises post-conversion? But Naaman. Some believe that it's Naaman who revealed this information to the king. I'm not sure that's the case. We're not told exactly who it is. But this is kind of an awkward scenario, isn't it? Don't you have a conflict of interest here? You have the guy who's just been converted to the God of Israel, who then is commanded by his to go out and to attack the people of Israel. And so, what's he supposed to do? It's kind of a strange arrangement. Verse 13, the king knows what he's going to do. So he said, I want you to go and see where he, that is Elisha, the Israelite prophet is, that I may send and get him. He's not mentioned that he wants to harm him. Maybe he's afraid to harm him. He just wants to send and get him. So why do you think he wants to have him? It could be that he wants to hurt him. He wants to kill him or maybe torture him. We're not told that's the case. What benefits are going to be just to go fetch him? There you go. Now that's something very good, Joe. He's a deep thinker always. That's something I hadn't considered. It's beyond me. But so it may be, hey, maybe I can use his services over here. Kind of like World War II. Thank God that America wins the Second World War, right? But afterward, America says, there's some pretty bright minds among those Nazis. What did we do? hey, why don't you come over and work for us instead of the other way around? I'll let you determine how that worked out. But that happens a lot, though. You have the same thing with Babylon and captivity, and the guys carried off, and some of them become assistants to the king, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, some benefit to the other land. Yeah, that's a good point, Joe. So he probably is. You might be thinking, hey, this guy could help us out. In the very least, he's not communicating to the king of Israel anymore, because that's the thorn in our side. That's the issue. So he doesn't say he wants to kill him or he wants to torture him. Just let me just be able to him so I know what he's not doing, because I know what he's doing now, and it's a harm to us. And it was told him, saying, surely he is in Dothan. So look back up at our map here, and you can see Samaria, the capital city, and Dothan, by the legend provided, we're just about 10 miles almost due north, slightly to the east, mainly north, from Samaria. But still, I know we don't have the borders drawn out, but still a good 100 miles away. So this guy's committed. He sends another. I'm sure this isn't cheap back in these ancient times to send all the supplies and all of the transport, all these armed forces, and he's been unsuccessful, failing in all these missions. This has been a waste of money. And so he says, all right, new mission, 100 miles. Let's get all the transport, all of the military power that we need. Verse 14, therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there. All for how many people? One. And who's this guy? This mighty warrior. Is his name Goliath? Is that what we call him? We call him the prophet. He's not a warrior at all. He doesn't even fight. And so it's like a whole army comes after this guy. What a scene. And when the servant of the man of God, so this prophet named Elisha has a servant. He had one before, not the same one, right? Chapter 5, what was that guy's name? The servant of Elisha? Greedy Gehazi? Yeah, good. So Gehazi, we ship him out. He has a problem. He's a leper now because of how he's disobeyed God and his greed and his lies, all of his wicked planning. So this is a new one, just to make clear. And when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city early in the morning. All right, they came by night, so they, through stealth, sneak in. And how would you like to wake up and throw open the curtains and all the guys with the guns and the spears and the cannonballs, all of this is just surrounding, all these archers. Of course, not guns back then, but that's what it would be today. How frightening would that be? It's over, or you would think. And his servant said to him, he's beside himself, this young man, alas, my master, what shall we do? He's distraught. But strangely, Elisha's just as cool as a cucumber. I love this statement, verse 16. So he answered, first of all, do not be afraid. It's fine. No, we don't know how to fight at all. We haven't been trained. And what do you have? Thousands of soldiers and all these weapons and horses and chariots surrounding, and they're after us. It's fine. Relax. For those who are with us are more than those who are with them. I'm sure the man looks around, sees no one, hears a cricket chirping, and is thinking, my master, am I missing something? I don't see anybody. Where is our protection of which you speak? And this is where our memory verse comes in. I told you, I say this with a lot, maybe my single favorite verse of the Bible. Certainly one of. 2 Kings 6:17. Who would like to say it? And I'll tell you, Roy's not here this morning. They're at Fair Grove. Roy and Bobby, they're seeing their friends over there. We miss them, but okay. Thank you, Amanda. I don't have to. Go ahead. Whew. Okay, so a few things here that are at work. Elisha told him, it's fine. Our forces far outnumber theirs. I don't see anyone, not a single one. And so he prays and he says, God, will you let him see? Okay, now I will state this. It's not mentioned it's not mentioned that Elisha sees these. Does he? It's very possible that he's given the miraculous ability, or it could be that he's such a strong person of faith, he knows. He knows the way God operates. And he walks not by sight, but by faith. And through faith, he could see it. He doesn't have to see it with his eyes, because he can see it, Andrea, with his heart. Now, that's very possible. And do we know that for sure? No. But I just want to suggest, let's not immediately sell him short as to what kind of powerful faith he might have. It may be that he doesn't need to see it with his eyes, because he can see it with his soul. This guy needs to see it with his eyes. He's a young apprentice, okay? We all need to grow in our faith, and that's this young man also. So he prays, and God says, okay, sure, that's what you asked. And he opens his eyes, and he sees more soldiers and more horses and more chariots than he's ever seen in all of his life, surrounding him and Elisha. But these aren't your average horses and soldiers, and what are these? They're of fire. These are the angelic hosts that surround and are protecting God's own. Now, the miracle comes in. I'm convinced the miracle isn't that these people are being surrounded by this heavenly protection. The miracle is that he can see the supernatural, the spiritual. There's a whole world, a whole battle. The Bible's very clear from cover to cover, going on around us, things that we cannot see, but things that are taking place with regularity. Before we move on, I want to mention a few things here. Hebrews 1, verses 13 and 14. Hebrews 1, 13 and 14. But to the which of the angels has he ever said, speaking of the Father, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool? Are they not all of them, ministering spirits, serving spirits, sent forth to minister or serve those who will inherit salvation? That's the purpose of the angels. It's to minister to us who are trying to work through this place. You have Matthew chapter 18. Matthew 18 in verses 5 and 6, Jesus says, be careful that you don't offend one of these little ones. And if that happens, if you're the cause of one of these little ones falling away from me, it'd be better if a huge stone, hundreds if not thousands of pounds, were tied around your neck and you're like that golf club or the axe head. You're thrown through the air to go in the middle of a body of water helplessly. And as you sink all the way down to the bottom and draw your last breaths, I know it's pretty graphic, but you get the point of what he's saying. That would be a better end for you than to have to face me, the all-powerful, in judgment after you've caused one of these little ones who serve me to fall away through some harm that you've done to him or her. And then he says this in verse 10 of Matthew 18. Take heed, he says, for their angels, plural, always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. I believe just like Elisha, there's a whole world of supernatural forces at work around us. And I don't believe that's a miracle, so to speak, of itself, because the miracle would be if our eyes were opened and we could see what it is that's going on. But hopefully the lesson we take from this is when there are threats of any kind, whether it's against our physical well-being or our mental capacity or against our spirituality, hopefully we understand, whoa, I don't have any reason to be afraid here, because those who are with me are far more than those who are with them. If only our eyes were open so that we could see what this young man does. Verse 18 back in 2 Kings 6. So when the Syrians came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, strike this people, I pray, with blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of the Lord. Now Elisha said to them, this is not the way, nor is this the city. Oh, you were trying to get to Dothan where Elijah is found. There's another place you need to go. Let me take you there. But he led them to Samaria. Now, what do we know about Samaria that's just 10 miles down to the south, a little bit west? What's Samaria? That's the capital. what do you think is going to be found in the capital? There's a whole army in that place just waiting on them. Oh, come on, here's the place you meant to go. Let me take you over here. And he leads them with their blindness right into the middle of the enemy, people that will kill them. So it was when they had come to Samaria that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and there they were, inside Samaria. And I like the NKJV, the exclamation point right there. It gives a little more effect to this. Yeah, it's like, what are we going to do? They're all going to kill us now. Now, when the king of Israel, Jehoram, saw them, remember, not a great guy himself, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I kill them? Shall I kill them? Do you think he might be chomping at the bit just a hair? Just waiting for the word. Start slinging the sword around. Did you notice, though, his terminology toward Elisha? My father, like a spiritual leader. What respect he's showing toward him. There's a history between them. And this family, the Ahab/Jezebel family, and Jehoram is the second-born son in that clan, they're not friendly toward Elisha at all. All of a sudden, he loves Elisha. He's his best friend because Elisha's doing good things for his kingdom. My father, I respect you. What a spiritual leader you are. Can I kill him? Can I kill him? But he answered, you shall not kill them. Would you kill those whom you have taken captive with your sword and your bow? Here's what you need to do. Set food and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master. In other words, go back home safe and sound. Then he prepared a great feast for them. That's what the prophet said to do. And after they ate and drank, he sent them away, and they went to their master. So the bands of Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel. It just so happens for our adult group, most of you were here on Wednesday night, we were discussing from Luke 9, Jesus as a man and his identity being revealed. And you have the apostles as they're going around, and they enter this village of the Samaritans as Jesus has just started his final descent into the Jerusalem area. And they go into this village of the Samaritans trying to prepare the way for Jesus. And the Samaritans say, nope, we're not interested in that Jew who's going down to Jerusalem. We are Samaritans, and we say that right here, Mount Gerizim is the place where people ought to worship. And John and his brother James are upset about this. What's their suggestion? What should be done to these people? These pagan numbskulls. Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven and vamoose them right here? Elijah did that. We could do that also if you want. We don't care. We can kill him. Can we kill him? Can we kill him? Sound familiar? And Jesus' response is, you guys are off in the head. You have a screw loose. Oh, he says, I didn't come to destroy people's lives. I came to save them. And so you see the Spirit of Jesus here at work. Are they pagan people who have been knuckleheads? Yeah. But we have complete power over them right now. Let's just send them back home. And look at the result. They're taught a lesson. So the bands of Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel. That doesn't mean they never, ever, ever would again. It means for a time they ceased doing so. But that time comes to a close. Verse 24. And it happened after this that Ben-Hadad, Daddy, should have taken care of him, Justin, shouldn't he? Yeah, he had his chance. And that would have been just. God wanted it in that circumstance. But now they're having to pay the consequence for disobeying. After this, Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his army, went up and besieged Samaria. Now there was a great famine in Samaria, and indeed they besieged it until a donkey's head, that's an unclean animal under Jewish law. It fits the bill for being clean in every way except it does not chew the cud. It's an unclean animal in Israel. And a head, what are you going to do with a donkey's head? You ever eaten monkey brains? No, and don't. That's dumb. What do you do with an animal's head? Does it enhance your beef stew flavor? Possibly, but don't use it. That's gross. An unclean animal. A donkey's head was sold for 80 shekels of silver. That's 50 American dollars about 20 years ago. At least 100, maybe more like I would say personally. 150 easily today. Inflation's out of control. 1/4 of a cab, depending on what you consult. A cab is a pint, so a quarter of a pint, about a cup's worth. So you have 1/4 of a cab of dove droppings. Oh, that poo, animal poo, that's good stuff, isn't it? Probably to be used for fuel. Yeah, right. If only we could have donkey heads and dove poop, is what Justin's saying. Our lunch would be complete. I think that's probably for fuel, in fairness, but sold for 5 shekels of silver, or $3 American, 25 years ago, about $10, just a handful of bird poop. You understand how bad inflation is right now because of war? Then as the king of Israel was passing the wall, a woman cried out to him, saying, "Help, my lord, O king." And he said, "If the Lord does not help you, where can I find help for you?" I think he's blaming things on God. "From the threshing floor or the winepress, we have no food, we have no drink. I can't do anything." Then the king said to her, "What's the problem? What's troubling you?" And she answered, "This woman said to me today, 'Give me your son that we may eat him today, and then we'll eat my son tomorrow.'" You get how bad things are in Israel? "So we boiled my son and ate him. And I said to her on the next day, 'Okay, now it's your turn. Give your son that we may eat him.'" She's a mess. She's hidden her son from us. I'm hungry. People in Israel are a mess right now. Now it happened when the king heard the words of the woman, he tore his clothes, and as he passed by on the wall, the people looked, and there underneath he had sackcloth on his body. Kings aren't supposed to dress like that in public. Then he said, "God do so to me, and more also, if the head of Elisha, the son of Shaphat, remains on him today." Very quickly, why does he want to kill Elisha? How's this his fault? Yeah. You know, they're the quarterbacks in town, aren't they? The preachers. When things go well, "Oh, we have the best preacher." When things aren't going great, "Why is he still here?" It's always the preacher's fault, isn't it? Always the quarterback's fault on the football team, whether they win or lose. It's the prophet's fault. But also remember, recently, he's the one that suggested, "Don't kill these people. Just send them back home." And now they've come back to antagonize the Israelites. And so I think that's probably a little more specifically why he's blaming things on Elisha. But Elisha was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. And the king sent a man ahead of him, but before the messengers came to him, he said to the elders, "Do you see how this son of a murderer, Jehoram, son of Ahab, the king, has sent someone to take away my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold him fast at the door." And this isn't to permanently hold him off, because he says, "Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him?" And what he's signifying is, even though he sent these people to kill me, there's been a change, I can tell already. Supernatural information of the king's heart. And he's going to regret the decision, and he's not actually going to have me executed. So we're just going to keep the door held off until the king arrives, and then we can sit down and we can have a heart-to-heart with him. That's a very generous, forgiving spirit that Elisha possesses toward the king. Verse 33, we'll close here. "And while he was still talking with him, there was the messenger coming down to him, and then the king said, 'Surely this calamity is from the Lord. This is all God's fault. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer?'" I know that sounds pretty disrespectful, and I think you can make the case that it is, but give him credit. This pagan man's not as bad as mom and dad, and he's willing to at least sit down and have a rational conversation about this. It's a question that we need to contemplate on a regular basis. And I ask you to consider, what circumstance, undesirable, are you facing in your life right now? I guarantee you everybody is something. What are you facing right now that's really causing you stress? You're worried, or maybe you're afraid of what might occur? That God would say to you, as Elisha did to his young assistant, "Just relax. Don't be afraid. It's all going to be just fine." And you might have that mentality, "Why shouldn't I go at this reckless abandon, just take care of all of it myself as I see fit? Why should I wait on God?" And we're going to close with a quotation of another tremendous Bible passage, Isaiah 40, verse 31. Here's why. "Because those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." But first, you have to wait on the Lord for Him and His power and His wisdom to respond at the perfect time. That's why we should wait on the Lord. What decision will Jehoram make? Will he heed the advice of Elisha? We'll find out next week. Chapter 7 and on through the 8th chapter, so all of 7, on into 8 through verse 15. Please read all of that, about a chapter and a half. And let's do for memory work 2 Kings 7:9, chapter 7, verse 9. Genuine repentance. Joe? Very good, Joe. Jesus with Peter, he's ready. You know, should we strike with the sword? He doesn't wait for the answer. He just starts swinging, and Jesus has to fix his mistakes, doesn't he? Yeah. God's way is always the best. Yeah, good. All right, thank you. We'll close on that. Appreciate it.